Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day, where we continue with our recitation from Gujari Ki War, Mahalla Tija, the composition Gujari Ki War, or ballad in the rag Gujari, composed by the third Nanak, Guru Amar Das. And this pauri, or stanza, or step, if you will, has two accompanying saloks, which has been the pattern so far. And we will recite the first salok, followed by the second, and then the pauri, which contains the essential message. And we will try to go line by line and see what message emerges out of it. Salok Mahalla Tija. Je Satgur Seve Apana. Tisno Puja Sab Koi. Je, if only. Satgur Seve Apana. If only we were to serve the true enlightener, the Satgur. Apana, which is within us, and by offering ourselves up to this enlightened source within us, the source of our being. Je Satgur Seve Apana, if only we were to do this, by giving ourselves up. Tisano Puja Sabakoi. Now, literally, what this means is Tisno Puja Sab, that such an individual is revered, honored, or worthy of honor, rather, because we know that that is not always the case. Prophets and sages have not always been honored by worldly people. What is being meant here is that they are worthy, praiseworthy. Sab Koi. Koi means rare. So the praiseworthy ones, they are rare. So rare is the one who serves the Satgur. And if only we were to do that. And then, Sabna Upama Sir Upao hai. Of all the means, Sabna Upama, Upav means a solution, a method, or an observance that you practice in order to achieve something, to solve a problem. Sabna Upama Sir Upao hai. Sir means above, the head. So this is the supreme method. It also means to be assured. So the Guru is saying, be assured that of all the means, this is the supreme means. Sabna Upama Sir Upao. So what is that means? Har naam parapat hoy. The way or the means that leads to self-knowledge. By self-knowledge, what is meant is wisdom of the self. Har naam parapat hoy. That is the supreme way. Antara sitala saat vasa. This is what happens when you follow that path. Tranquility and peace comes over the mind. Antara sitala sat vasa. Vasa is to reside. It comes to reside over the mind. Jab hirday. The self is realized as being within the heart. The heart, as we have talked about, is not the organ, but it is that dimensionless core of one's being, from where the source emerges, the source of our life, the source of our vitality. Hirday. Jap hirday. Jap means to realize, to understand, to feel, to presence. So the self is realized within the heart. And then the resulting effect is sada sukha hoye, enduring happiness, sukh, well-being. Then what happens? What is happening now is Amrit Khana, Amrit Penna, Nanak Naam Vadai Hoye. So what happens is, if you serve the true enlightener, which is the supreme way, then tranquility and peace will come over your mind and you will experience enduring happiness. Then what happens is that wisdom, Amrit Khana, Amrit Penna, Amrit means immortal, immutable. That immutable wisdom, which is at the source of your being, becomes your nourishment. This is spiritual elevation. Says Nanak, through the wisdom of the self, we are elevated to spiritual heights. Nanak Naam Vadai Hoye. Vadai is elevation, greatness. What is being said here is that the mind attains to a heightened consciousness. Consciousness of what? Of the unity of being. It realizes the unity of everything. That is heightened consciousness, the interdependence of all creation and the interconnectedness. So that is what you attain if you serve the Satgur. And the way to serve the Satgur is to give yourself up, to give up your ego thinking. The second salok, Mahalla Tija. E man gur ki sukh sun. E man gur ki sikh suni. There is a bihari here, which means an action that has been taken in the past. E man gur ki sikh suni. The mind that pays attention to the teachings of the Gur, the teacher, the enlightened teacher, the Guru. The mind that pays attention. E man gur ki sikh suni. Sikh is the teaching, the lesson. What happens to that person? Har pave guni nidhan. Anyone who pays attention to the teachings of the good teacher discovers the treasure trove of virtue. Har pave guni nidhan. Har here is everyone, anyone, any mind that pays attention to the teachings of the Guru will discover the treasure trove of virtue. What is the treasure trove of virtue? Guni nidhan. Nidhan usually refers to a hidden treasure. So the source that is hidden within you, virtue, becomes apparent. And what you realize then is, Har sukh datta manavase haume jaye guman. When virtue, you realize that virtue is the sukhadatta, the giver of joy for everyone. It comes to reside in the mind, and then the ego pride dissolves. Or you could put it the other way. When the ego pride dissolves as a result of the Guru's teaching, that giver of joy, that treasure trove, is present in the mind. But Nanak nadri paiya. This is the grace of the Guru. Nanak nadri paiya ta anandana lage dhyan. Says with the grace of the Guru teacher, that virtue is found, that treasure trove is found, and then the mind becomes rooted in mindfulness of wisdom. It acts out of wisdom all the time. Anandana lage dhyan, because that is where it is embedded, rooted and focused on. And now we come to the pauri. The first two saloks have basically laid out the frame, and here is the message. Essentially, it is Sat Santokh Sab Sach Hai Gurmukh Pavita. Now, pavitra means purified. It also means to obtain. Sat, santokh sab sach hai. Sat is eternity, the truth. Everyone can attain to this truth by following the way of the Gurmukh, by being Gur guided. And Sat, what is that Sat that we need to realize? That this existence that we see is eternal. It's always there. But it has certain characteristics. It originates, it stays permanent, and yet it disappears. That is the nature of reality. It originates in the mind, it perpetuates in the mind, and then it dissolves in the mind constantly. This is reality. So we live in a world of opposites. So there is persistence within change. That is the paradox of this reality, that it is changing and yet unchanging. This is what you begin to grasp. Gurumukha Pavitra, because your mind is now pure. Pure in the sense of not being colored by dual thinking, duality. Dual thinking comes into play when the ego considers itself to be the subject and looks at the world as the object. What Guruji is telling you is that there really is no distance between the ego that observes and the system that it is observing. That there is an interconnectedness. One impacts the other. We are in a relational existence. Existence is relational. It originates, it perpetuates, and it destroys. All of this is happening at the same time. That is the wonder. That is the paradox. Androh kapat vikar gaya man sahje jitta. Sahje. With ease then, spontaneous ease. The deception of the mind is eliminated. What is the deception? Precisely this, that it sees itself as being separate from what it is seeing, whereas there is a deep interconnectedness between the two. That deception, which leads to other forms of deception, like attachment to things, because they are perceived as being permanent. So that deception is erased. Andron kapat vikar gaya. Man sahje. The mind is now relaxed. Sahje. And when the mind is relaxed, jitta, you have conquered the mind, the vacillations of the mind. Teh jot pragas anandaras. Teh, that light of wisdom. Pragas, it is light. Anandaras, its nature is of bliss and aesthetic delight. The ras is aesthetic delight in things. The mind now takes an aesthetic delight in the universe. What is an aesthetic delight? It means being a cynosure, just like a cynosure of a drama watches it, shares the emotions of the actors, but is not actually touched by it. Similarly, we need to enjoy life without being touched by it. That's the key. Agyan gavitta. When ignorance, this ignorance of dual thinking is erased, then you begin to take aesthetic delight. There is the you, the self, that is watching that little you, the ego, running around. And there is a distance, so that you're really not affected, you're not impacted. Andin har ke gun rave. Rave is to be colored, immersed in the virtues of the self. Gun Pargat Kita, the mind becomes a personification, an embodiment of virtue. In other words, in simple terms, you begin to practice virtue, the virtue that is necessary to get to where you have to get to. Sabna data ek hai, ikko har mitta. You realize the virtue of realization that there is but one that sustains everything, one actor, and that actor is indeed our only friend. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.